Okay, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Balance Breakdown. Today I am joined by, and I want to make a public announcement here, where we congratulate Mr. Jack Sear on becoming a brown belt. Congratulations, Jack Sear, on becoming a brown belt. A phenomenal achievement.
Well done, Jack.
Thank you very much, boys. Couldn't have done it without you.
I mean, it's been a long time coming, right? A long time coming, but here we are. We're here now, and I couldn't be more proud of you, sir. Congratulations.
Thank you, mate. You've obviously played a part in that, but I must give most praise to Sean for mentoring me and educating me and guiding me along the right path these years. So thank you,
I'd
Sean.
say from the start of me and Jack training together, I always saw there was some massive potential there. So, it's a special day for me. It's kind of like a father, watching their son. It's great.
It's emotional. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
The reason why Sean was given his brown belt is because he passed the single leg defense test, and there we are, right?
That's it.
That's it.
So I will now introduce the only man that I know that keeps pastry in a washing machine, Mr. Sean McGinnis.
Oh my God. Hi, Harry.
Hello,
I was hoping you were going to have something nice to say to me this week. I thought I was going to get congratulated on something small, but
something small. Have you just said that Jack getting a brown belt is something small? You prick.
No. Obviously.
All that praise and you piss it away.
God, that is hilarious. What a start.
It's the coaching style. It's the coaching style that I've got. I can't have Jack getting ahead of himself.
Jesus Christ.
No, I meant in my own life, a small thing that I've achieved this week.
What have you done?
Not much, really.
Well, right, let's get into some fucking fights.
Jesus that's probably a good idea.
So, we're recording this on a Friday, and obviously the fights are tomorrow, the RDA fights, but just a quick thought on Paul Felder stepping up on literally a week's notice to fight RDA. Jack, what do you think?
Mad respect, and especially for someone who maybe has checked out a little bit. He was obviously close to retiring after the Dan Hooker fight. He's set up with his commentary gig as well. And to be honest, he's someone who has competed at 170 pounds before. He is someone who is coming on 5 days' notice to go against an absolute cardio machine in RDA. He could have easily asked for 3 rounds here as well and probably got that agreed. So, yeah, much respect to Paul Felder for saving the day. And I'm happy because I was looking forward to Makhachev and RDA.
Same.
But I think that would have been a little bit more one note, maybe a little bit more predictable. I think what I like about the new main event is, to be honest, I'm not too sure how it's going to play out. So, yeah, very, very pleased.
Excellent. And I don't give a fuck about Sean's opinion, so we'll move on to the first fight. So the first fight of UFC 255. 255 is a 125-pound double header. We have the Queen, Valentina Shevchenko, versus Jennifer Maia, and then topping the bill is Figueiredo versus Alex Perez. So we'll start there. Sean, do you want to tell me your thoughts on Deiveson Figueiredo versus Alex Perez?
Yeah, I think it's a good fight. I suppose like a quick thought on the card in general. It's just a really strange card. It's like when you first look at it, it looks a bit. I don't know whether we've been spoilt with Khabib versus Gaethje and everything else like that, but yeah, I look at it. There's a couple of matchups that sort of jump out, but it seems a bit of a weird card for a pay-per-view, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously I asked you what your thoughts on Figueiredo Perez is, and instead you just shat on the whole card. So, as per usual, Sean is starting in the best Sean way possible, for fuck's sake. But yeah, I mean, I actually agree in a way. I think the top 2 fights are good fights. I think there's something to like for the European fans, for Paul Craig fighting Mauricio, who are again. I think Katlyn Chookagian versus Cynthia Calvillo is a little bit of a strange fight, to be honest. If Calvillo wins this, she's probably #1 contender. Chookagian isn't #1 contender if she wins this. Jessica Andrade probably gets the shot over both of them, but there we are. Mike Perry fighting Tim Means is just something I don't really want to see. Shevchenko Lipski is a bit of a weird one, but if that is on the main card, that's absolutely disgraceful. But if it's not, fine. Alan Jouban fighting Jared Gordon's not terrible. Sean's brother Kyle Daukaus fighting some German lad is whatever. Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval is the people's main event. Let's not get that twisted. Absolute fucking certified banger. Then Louis Cosce Some American.
Cosce. I think they're saying Cosce.
Thank
That's
you.
it.
Cosce, Harry.
Versus.
How do you not know that?
Shut your fucking mouth. Lewis Cosce versus Sasha Palatnikov. We'll find out all about Palatnikov when we get to Jack later. And then we've got Nicolas Dalby versus Daniel Rodriguez. Like to be honest, there's some decent fights on there. There's some decent fights. There's some good, but they're fights, as Sean has already pointed out when he gave his in-depth breakdown of Alex Perez versus Figueiredo, that actually they're probably more suited to a fight night card, right? Like they're probably more suited to a fight night. I wouldn't expect to see a lot of these bulking out a pay-per-view, but there we are. So I'm now going to ask for some actual fight analysis, and obviously Sean's fucking useless. So Jack, can you tell me what your thoughts are on Deiveson Figueiredo versus Alex Perez, please?
Of course I can. And just to follow in Sean's path, I think the card overall is actually all right. I
agree. Sean's just a fucking hater.
I think it's just ordered a little bit strangely. Like I think you need Moreno and Royval on the main card.
100%. Jesus.
Maybe even Dalby Rodriguez as well. That'd be a good one to kick off.
How is Dalby Rodriguez the first fight of the night? How?
I think they'll move it. I think
they will as well.
A few late notice replacements and whatnot. But yeah, that needs a bit more attention. Coming to Mr. Figueiredo and Alex Perez, I think it's a really, really good fight. I think I was hoping for Moreno to get the shot, but obviously on the back of Perez's impressive streak, capped off by that standout performance over Jussier Formiga. He has obviously earned.
Disgusting.
He has earned the shot. I think as much improvements as Alex Perez has made, I think the big concern to me here is his durability. He's only been stopped once by strikes, and that was because he was physically overwhelmed by Benavidez, and he kind of burnt out a little bit there after coming off quite a strong start. In his other losses, he's been subbed 3 out of the remaining 4. I think that he's obviously made a lot of technical improvements, and he's very experienced considering where he is at this point in his career. He's still less than 30. He's had nearly 30 fights himself. I just worry that if there are any causes of concerns about being physically overwhelmed or durability, then Deiveson Figueiredo is not the guy you want to share the cage with. He is obviously an absolute powerhouse for 125. As we've seen over his recent streak, he's not just a potent threat on the feet. He's also been showing off his submission arsenal over in his past kind of couple of fights. Obviously, the guillotine of Tim Elliott, and then the absolute brutal submission of Joe Benavidez last time out. To summarize, I think that as impressed as I have been with Alex Perez over his recent streak, I think he would need to fight a perfect game plan here. Figueiredo himself is incredibly durable. We haven't really seen him bothered or even rocked by a punch. So the only path I see here to victory is for Alex Perez to out-duel and outpoint Figueiredo over the course of 25. And with someone as dangerous as Figueiredo, I just can't see that happening.
So I agree, but I think there is a different angle. And I think that different angle is Deiveson Figueiredo absolutely destroys himself to make weight, right? And I think that what we haven't seen, is we haven't seen somebody take Deiveson Figueiredo into the 3rd and 4th round and survive and see what his cardio is like. We've not seen it, right? And to think that a man who has the amount of power that Deiveson Figueiredo does have in his hands, in his strikes, in his wrestling, I wonder if that does carry. Now, my thoughts for Alex Perez, and you've already said it, he's very durable, but how durable is he against somebody with the power of Deiveson Figueiredo? My question to that is, how well does Deiveson Figueiredo do if Alex Perez can land a round full of leg kicks? What happens to his power? What happens to his explosiveness? And if that is the case, and we see Alex Perez take him into the 2nd and 3rd round, I wonder what happens. Because it's not like Alex Perez doesn't know how to finish a fight, right? Beats Jose Torres, 1st round, TKO. Darcy's Carl's John Tomas. Kevin Gray, Anaconda choke. Jordan Espinoza, arm triangle. And then he stops UCA Formiga in the 1st round with leg kicks, right? Now that tells me something. UCA Formiga is an absolute demon. Now, okay, he's on the tail end of his career, but still, he's a demon, right? He gets stopped by leg kicks. The only man to beat Figueiredo, UCA Formiga. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm picking Formiga. I think he's got too much power, and I think we saw against Joe B, that man has serious power. But I do wonder whether Perez has something. Sean?
Yeah, I think just to piggyback on a couple of things that both of you said, I think the leg kick threat of Alex Perez is a really interesting one because I think he himself has only found recently how effective it is going to the lower part of the leg. Like he's always been someone that's been a big leg kicker from all of his fights in the UFC, but he's always kicked above the knee. And up until that, you know, whether it was like a light bulb moment or obviously it's a big trend in MMA right now, when he did start kicking below the leg against Formiga, I think that was a big surprise to him how effective that was as much as everyone else, because I don't think any of us thought that was how that fight was going to sort of play out. With Deiveson though, even though it's so difficult, I think that leg kick's a good way to go. But my issue is how these guys both match up styles wise. Perez has always been a pressure sort of fighter. He's got a bit of that peekaboo style going on in terms of his striking. And the issue with that style is that you have to draw someone else off into a trade. You have to be taking some shots to land more. And like both of you have said, I mean, when you watch Deiveson against Joe Benavidez, especially the second time, it looks like everything this guy lands with, you know, has some serious power that's really hurting the flyweights. So I'm not really sure, to be honest. I still think I'm going to edge Deiveson just because I think styles-wise, you need a style like Formiga had, and you need a game plan like Formiga had, where you sort of dance around on the outside, blitz in, sort of try and outpoint him and stay away from that power. But yeah, I'm really not sure that Alex Perez is that type of fighter, to be honest.
So let's say Deiveson Figueiredo gets through this, and we'll go to picks in a second. But let's say Deiveson Figueiredo gets through this. Does he fight Cody Garbrandt, or does he fight the winner of Moreno Royval?
I think it's all going to come down to timing, to be honest. I think the UFC will always go where the money is. Garbrandt is the money fight. We all love Royval. We all love Moreno. If their names would necessarily resonate with the casual fan base, especially if Royval and Moreno is on the undercard for this event. Definitely not helping anything there. So yeah, depending on Mr. Garbrandt's timeline for coming back, I think he'd probably get the shot.
Fair enough. Sean?
Yeah, I think the best way in terms of money and everything else, it'd probably be good for him to go the Cody Garbrandt route. But I kind of feel bad for Moreno, to be honest. I think that he was leapfrogged in a bit of a strange way as number one contender because of the performance that Perez pulled out against Formiga. There's no doubt that Perez is on a really good streak in his own right, but I do think he sort of managed to leapfrog Moreno. But yeah, I agree with Jack. I think that Moreno versus Royval has to be moved up higher on the card.
To me, it should be in the spot of Paul Craig, Mauricio Hua, to be honest, because that's an absolute banger. And Mauricio Hua versus Paul Craig is not.
Yeah, even the Cynthia Calvillo fight, I know that's got probably more title implications than Craig and Shogun.
I don't think it does. I really don't think it does. I think that Jessica Andrade stamped her number one contendership fucking seriously against Katlyn Chookagian, right? She is absolutely the next in line for whoever wins that fight. Go on.
Agreed, but if we have a scenario like we've just mentioned with Garbrandt, then there's going to need to be someone else there as well. So obviously, if Calvillo is able to beat Katlyn, she's also kind of firming her way as towards being the next in line.
Sure. All right, let's move to picks. Jack, who have you got?
I've got Deiveson Figueiredo by knockout inside of 2 rounds.
Sean?
Yeah, I've got a pretty similar scenario, to be honest. I think it's going to be similar to Perez versus Benavidez, to be honest, which he actually got knocked out twice in that fight as well, which was quite sort of strange. But yeah, I think Deiveson should have this done within 2 rounds.
And I agree. Jesus, we've started so strongly, lads. This will only go downhill from here. Okay, so we'll move on to probably the easiest fight on the card to pick, and that's Valentina Shevchenko versus Jennifer Maia. I'll give a quick introduction to this. It's as if, I mean, Jesus, how can I even? Basically, Valentina Shevchenko has to turn up with one leg to lose this, I think. She's looked ultra dominant in all of her fights. The only fights that she's lost are to the greatest of all time in female MMA, Amanda Nunes, and then once to Liz Carmouche way back in the day. And when they fought again, she put on an absolute clinic, right? So it's not like that one was close in the rematch. She's got the insane head kick over Jessica Wright that was just absolutely disgusting. The ground and pound crucifix against Chookagian. And this is why I think it's a bit weird that Chookagian's fighting Calvillo is she fought Valentina last fight out, right? Valentina's last fight out was Katlyn Chookagian. And since then, Chookagian's lost to Jessica Andrade. And now she's going to fight still Cynthia Calvillo. Like, it's a weird bit of matchmaking for me, but you know, it is what it is. Jennifer Maia, on the other hand, you know, she came off a big win against Jojo Calderwood. For me, Jojo Calderwood should never have taken that fight. I understand she wanted to be active, but she was next in line for that shot with Shevchenko. And bearing in mind, Jennifer Maia is a grappler predominantly, right? And we know that that's Calderwood's weakness. It probably would have been best to just hold out and take the title fight, but this is MMA. And, you know, the other really weird thing about Katlyn Chookagian is Maia's last loss was Katlyn Chookagian. But anyway, Shevchenko has everything in her arsenal. She has amazing Muay Thai stand-up. She has beautiful boxing. Her footwork's impeccable. She's got a really, really improved ground game. And she's got power, right? Like serious power, serious knockout power, serious concussive blows. Jennifer Maia has a ground game and some okay striking. That's really what we're looking at, right, Sean?
Yeah, I agree. I actually think a really interesting thing listening to people who have said that they pick Maia to win this one.
What? Who said that? Name them right now.
Mackenzie did. And I imagine that's just some sort of weird, like, jiu-jitsu, you know, sort of alliance. But yeah, the issue is, I accept it's a weird argument, but the idea Jennifer Maia is a jiu-jitsu black belt, therefore she'll do better than Valentina. And I'm not even sure whether this is that much of a hot take, to be honest, but I think Valentina is a much better grappler in the context of MMA than Jennifer Maia is anyway. Mate, I could really see this. Sorry,
Juliana Pena won Worlds, right? At black belt, I believe. Valentina submitted it with an armbar.
Well, there you go.
What are you talking about? This is ridiculous. And that's 3 years ago.
What? Hang on. Valentina subbed her?
Yeah, Valentina subbed Juliana Pena with an armbar. Don't you remember?
Yeah.
It was fucking beautiful.
Yeah, sorry. No, yeah, I'm saying Valentina's the better grappler.
Yeah, I agree. But to the argument of, Jennifer Maia's a black belt, therefore she'll do better, is...
No. Yeah, I don't agree with that.
I know. I'm just making sure I'm on your side.
Okay. Sorry, that was weird. But yeah, so Valentina, I think she is a much better grappler in the context of MMA than Jennifer Maia is, which I could really see this playing out similar to Amanda Nunes versus Felicia Spencer, to be honest, where people sort of go in and say the grappling's the way to victory. But I think that Jennifer Maia is probably going to get shut down there as well.
I agree. I mean, from the most superior grappler we have on the podcast, Jack, can you give your thoughts about how Jennifer Maia is not going to be able to sub Shevchenko?
Yeah, I mean, she boxes in most of her fights, right? Like she showed that she can hit an armbar off of her from close guard, which is a weirdly common thing in female MMA. But yeah, to be honest, I haven't seen enough from her wrestling. I haven't seen anything from her top game that would make me even consider the fact that she might have a grappling advantage. Look, we've got Cynthia Calvillo there, who might be able to test Shevchenko's grappling, a very competent wrestler. We have Jessica Andrade, former champion, coming up. These are much more interesting matchups. And unfortunately, I can't get into this one. Maya's been very fortunate to find herself in this position. Not lucky because I'm talking to Harry Powell.
My man.
And yeah, I think the biggest question for me is, does she get finished? She's been pretty durable. She hasn't been finished since I remember she got slept pretty badly by a roided up female fighter from Germany on an old Cage Warriors. Can't remember her name at the moment.
Don't pull your punches, Jack. Yeah, don't pull them.
Sorry, no, she's 100% roided, and she was armbarred early in her career as well. No, this girl was juicy, and not a good kind of juicy either. She was a serious. She was an Andre Galvao juicy.
It was on Cage Warriors. No way.
It was on Cage Warriors. And what's the girl's name, Harry?
Sheila Gaff, her name is.
That was it, Sheila Gaff. Yeah, and I think Shevchenko probably will get the finish. It depends. She does have a tendency to coast in some fights. The Carmouche fight she coasted, for example. But I have absolutely no doubt that she's going to win this fairly dominantly.
I agree. I think the only thing I will say in Jennifer Maia's favour is when we look at the people that she's lost to outside of Cage Warriors, Leslie Smith in Invicta, no slouch. Deanna Bennett, who looks like a prospect coming out of Invicta. Liz Carmouche, Katlyn Chookagian. So she's not losing to scrubs, right? That's for sure. But Valentina is just so many levels above these women. And
yeah, you got to beat those girls if you want to have any chance of doing.
I agree.
So yeah, look, I think Jennifer Maia is a decent staple for the top 10 of this flyweight division. But yeah, I don't see her getting much done here.
I'm going to start with my pick. My pick is Valentina finishes it in round 3.
Nice. I'm gonna.
Jack?
Yeah, I think I'm comfortable. I think probably inside 3 as well, given how easy Maia was flustered on the feet versus Chookagian, who doesn't really have much power at all. So yeah, I think around that round 3, round 4 mark, Shevchenko will stop over strikes.
Sean?
Yeah, I think this is the first time ever we've all been in agreement twice. But yeah, I think the same thing. I can't see her getting past. I'd be really impressed if she managed to get this to a decision, to be honest.
I agree. So what's your actual pick?
So round 3 TKO for Valentina.
Perfect. Thank you. I will move on to, for some reason, essentially the co-main event, right, with outside of the title fights, and that's Mauricio Shogun Hua versus Paul Craig. Sean, do you want to take us away?
Yeah, this is a real glitch in the matrix type of fight. Like, it's very strange that it's happened, but I kind of like it in a strange way, just because on the one side, Mauricio, who are like, I don't really want him fighting anyone outside of like legend matchups and stuff like that. Like his last fight against Nogueira was fun, but to be honest, he's one of those guys that's in the twilight of his career, and you know, I'd probably like him to retire soon. And with Paul Craig, he obviously, you know, does have youth on his side, but he isn't the type of fighter that you think about that sort of yells out danger. You know, he's a very sort of reactive grappler. He does a lot of things against the fence.
He's extremely dangerous in the final 10 seconds of a fight after you've beaten him to a fucking pulp.
That's when he may be the slowest starter in that sense. Like once he's woken up, if you give him a full, you know, nearly 15 minutes. But yeah, so I think it's an interesting one. I still think that he needs to take Shogun seriously. I think even in his sort of new run after that terrible loss to Anthony Smith, I think Shogun still proved quite a few times that he is really dangerous, especially anything coming from his right side. He has a really nice overhand right, a really nice uppercut. And if you look at fights like his fight against Tyson Pedro, I think I actually was listening to an interview today where he tore Pedro's ACL with a leg kick, just with one, which is, you know, it was pretty scary. But yeah, I think for Paul Craig, it's so hard because he is so reactive with his grappling. He doesn't tend to take the initiative in a lot of these fights. Like a lot of the fights see him pushed up against the fence, and then he'll get you with a submission after he's conceded a takedown, which I'm not sure he'll be able to get away with someone like Shogun. Even if you look at some of the fights that Craig's lost, like I think, and I'm going off memory here, when he fought Alonzo Menefield, it was a big right hand that sort of puts him out.
It was.
And again, some of that comes from not managing the pace from the start, letting the fighter do things to you and then reacting off of that. So yeah, I still think I'm edging Shogun for this one.
Fair enough. Jack?
Me too. So the first fight was quite strange. If you'd have told me going into this fight that one of them would get boxed up against the fence and nearly get stopped and then kind of pull it back with some grappling dominance, I definitely wouldn't have said that it'd be Paul Craig getting the better of the striking and then Shogun taking over the grappling, right? So that was an interesting surprise. I feel like that was kind of the surprising aggression and accuracy of Craig's striking was I'm not sure it's going to be as effective this time. I think Shogun's probably going to see it coming. Shogun's always been a very competent grappler. I don't think he's been submitted since way back against Renato Babalu Sobral, which is, we're probably talking before we was all born, right? That was Yonks and Yonks. So yeah, I think it's, do you know what? I think it's a fun fight. I'm glad they're rematching. I'm a big fan of Paul Craig. He's kind of second in the UFC history books for most submissions at light heavyweight. I would love for him to get that record someday. But yeah, I think this is a pretty hard matchup, as even as shot porn as Shogun is.
I agree. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think you guys have said anything different to what I'm thinking. To be honest, I think, look, if he's able to get the better of, I mean, one thing I will say is Craig is improving, right? When he first started in the UFC, that armbar over Luis Henrique da Silva was cool. Then he took a couple of losses, and everything he finishes is some form of jits. So we know where the danger really comes from, and we saw in his last attempt with Mauricio that his striking had improved, and then obviously we saw the Antigulov fight. If he can, as Sean's already touched on, if he can be the aggressor, he could probably get something done. If not, I pick Shogun in this one. So if we go to proper picks, Jack, who've you got?
I'm gonna take Mauricio Shogun, who are by torn between knockout and decision, but I'm gonna go decision. He's looked a little bit. He's looking even slower as of late. So yeah, I think he'll win by decision.
Sean?
Yeah, I think he's going to edge. This is Shogun. I think Shogun's going to edge a pretty narrow split decision.
Okay, I'm saying draw. We'll move on. So the next one is Katlyn Chookagian versus Cynthia Calvillo. Sean, do you want to take us away the number one contendership for 125?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I think Cynthia Calvillo has... I think this is an interesting one. Is just it's usually the thing I say when I'm not actually that interested in the fight, ironically, just to convince myself that I'm motivated to sort of break it down, to be honest. But, you know, Cynthia Calvillo, she's looked good in the short time that she's moved up a weight class. And I think that her fight against Jessica a lot of that fight was her getting used to the things that come with fighting bigger women. But I still think going to fight Katlyn Chookagian is a massive step up in competition. It seems like a bit of a leap, to be honest. Katlyn's fought who's who of the division. She's obviously, fought for a title against Shevchenko. She's had a difficult loss against Jessica Andrade. And she seems to get shut out by that top level of competition. But then if you do put her against, like an Antonia Shevchenko, she just sort of gets, she looks really dominant.
Actually.
Antonina Shevchenko, she does get shut. She looks really, really dominant. So this is a tricky one for me. I think that Chookagian should still win this pretty easily, just for the length, to be honest. I know Jack was speaking before about a fight against Jennifer Maia, where she sort of managed to keep Maia at a distance for the whole fight. And I think for someone like Calvillo, I think her style's more sort of footwork based. She's used to picking people off from the outside. So it's going to be hard for her, in my mind, to put the pressure on Chookagian and win that way.
I agree. So I think my take on this is Chookagian is 5'9" and Calvillo is 5'4", right? And what's Chookagian really good at? She's really good at boxing on the outside, using her stick and move. She's very awkward. She's very hard to deal with to get inside on. Calvillo likes to fight on the inside. She likes the pressure. I think that plays inside of Chookagian's hands. Chookagian is a Danaher brown belt, so it's not like she's a slouch on the ground. Obviously, Calvillo finished a lot of her fights with jits and with subs, and that's cool. But I think it's a tough fight for Cynthia Calvillo. Now, we could just see her go in, land big power shots, and blam Chookagian and give a Jack Sear certified whacking. But I'm not sure that is the case. Jack, what do you think?
I am completely against both of you here.
Wow.
Chookagian's been taken down by far worse grapplers than Calvillo, even if we take the size advantage out of the question, right? Like, Joanne Calderwood took her down 3 times. Liz Carmouche, an excellent grappler, and probably, like, if we're looking for a similar type of fighter that Chookagian has fought before, took her down 4 times. She was obviously taken down twice against Jessica Andrade. Her takedown defense has never looked particularly good, to be honest. Meanwhile, Calvillo pretty much takes anyone down she fights. Jessica I's traditionally had pretty good takedown defense, and And even with that size discrepancy, Calvillo was able to get her down 4 times in their 5-rounder as well. So
That's fair.
look, I think Chookagian will have a big reach advantage. She had a reach advantage as well against Jessica Andrade, but yeah, I think I lean on Calvillo's wrestling here, and I think she'll actually take a comfortable win.
I mean, I don't think that Calvillo and Andrade are a fair comparison, because Andrade carries John Lineker-esque power in her hands.
Very true. Very true. And it was more of a case of someone also smaller can kind of mitigate that reach advantage. But yeah, they will definitely do it in different fashions.
For sure. We will move to picks. Sean, who do you have in that fight?
Yeah, as much as I could see, like Jack says, that Calvillo would sort of Carla Esparza, Katlyn Chookagian, I'm still going with Katlyn. I think she's going to win a unanimous decision.
Jack?
Calvillo, unanimous decision.
And actually, I'm going to steal Jack. Jack has swayed me mid-analysis. Jack's absolute wonderful breakdown has swayed me. So I'm going to go Calvillo via unanimous decision.
The breakdown was basically one gets taken down a lot, one likes doing takedowns.
Okay, we'll move on to just possibly the weirdest fight on the card.
I'm not sure.
We've got alleged domestic abuse, alleged alcoholic Mike Perry versus Dirty Bird Tim Means. Sean, do you want to break us down?
Yeah, this is it's a really strange one. It is kind of fun though. For me, just because the reputation that Tim Means has had as well, back in the day, being a bit of a crazy, to be fair, now as well, just a bit of a crazy fighter. And I think he's struggled sort of managing to get any sort of consistency in the UFC. But yeah, in terms of Mike Perry, it's hard really to look past the controversy. I think the thing I'm most interested in is just who's going to appear in his corner. Are we going to get Darren Till just pop out of nowhere? And
Darren Till's definitely not in his corner, by the way.
He's going to be sprinting towards that cage with a white towel in hand. To just throw in there, but yeah, I think styles wise, I think this is Perry's fight to lose. I think Perry's gone from fighting sort of the top guys in the division, having tough fights against Vicente Luque, to then having this run now where he's been against Mickey Gall, who I think was a big step down in competition for him. And I still think, even though Tim Means can sometimes be surprising on the feet, I just think he has more ways to win. I think he could out wrestle Tim Means, and I think he could beat him in the striking as well. So yeah, I'm edging towards Mike Perry here, even though who knows what that guy is going to do.
I mean, aside from the fact that, although I think you're absolutely right that there's no way that Darren Till will be in his corner legally, but 1,000,000% Darren storms through those doors like you see on The Ultimate Fighter, a Raw Dog t-shirt in one hand, a picture of Perry's missus in the other hand, and in the one hand he's going to have a towel, he's going to run up that cage and launch it in there screaming, Yama. But, I mean, look, I think...
Was that
I know that... It was fucking scouts, mate.
Oh wow!
I know that MMA Mass doesn't work, right, and all this stuff, but we forget that Mike Perry beat Paul Felder once upon a time, right? And although he took he's taken some losses and whatever. Let's look very briefly at Tim Means' last wins. Thiago Alves, right? Knowing that Thiago Alves is old as fuck. Ricky Rainey, and that was 2 years ago. In that time, he's lost to Bilal Muhammad. He's lost to Nico Price, who's a super average fighter. He's lost to Daniel Rodriguez. And then he beat Loreno Starpoli. I agree with Sean that this is Mike's fight to lose. But I think my problem is I think Mike Perry is a shithouse. And I wonder whether everything that's happened to him outside of the octagon in the last year and a half is going to have taken away from the way that he has trained, the way that he's going to fight. I know, again, this is nothing to really call into official analysis, but I saw him release some videos the other day of his training and him hitting the bag, and he looks like Sean, right? Which doesn't bode well in any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, I'm probably going to take Mike Perry in this because Tim Means is also nearly 58 years of age. But, I mean, yeah, I'll throw it over to Jack for some non-trolling.
So this is the dirty bird versus the dirt bag.
I like that.
I think this is, for me, this is in the potential fight of the night. Fight of the night potential alongside Moreno, Royval, and also D-Rod, Daniel Rodriguez versus Dalby as well.
That's a sleeper.
It comes down to Means, his durability. He's once really, really great durability seems to be fading. He was obviously knocked out for the first time by Nico Price. Daniel Rodriguez hurt him really badly before he wrapped up that really clean guillotine. And recently he's been leaning on his wrestling a little bit more, and I don't think that option's going to be there for him against Mike Perry. He's been naturally quite a good wrestler, very, very hard to take down. He's been training with Yoel Romero over the past kind of 6 months, so I'm sure that hasn't hurt at all with regards to his takedown defense. And it's quite hard to get a read on kind of what Mike Perry's going to show up, right? Like I felt like the Mike Perry that beat Cowboy Oliveira and the one that beat Vicente Luque seemed to be making narrowly lost to Vicente Luque.
I was going to say, yeah, it's a split decision loss, right?
Seemed to be making decent improvements, right? And then obviously he was whacked by Jeff Neal, and look, that Mickey Gall fight, that's a very favourable matchup with him. And whilst he coasted in that, I don't necessarily think he looked as sharp as he did. For me, it just comes down to that durability factor, and unless Means has a way of kind of outpointing him and staying on the outside, I think he's probably gonna take the harder shots here, potentially get stopped. But I'm favouring Mike Perry here.
So if you're favouring Mike Perry, can you give me a proper pick, please?
I am going to go Mike Perry via knockout in round 1.
Wow. He's going round 1.
Wow. Yeah, I am indeed. Yeah, I think I find it hard.
Tim Means.
I love Tim Means. I just find it hard to see. So I find it hard to see him withstanding some of Mike Perry's shots, especially given how he was troubled. But don't get me wrong, Nico Price, Daniel Rodriguez, both big hitters as well. But Perry's got similar power, and I think if he connects, Means he's going to be in trouble.
I agree. Sean?
Yeah, I think, again, it's Perry's fight to lose, but I could see this playing out quite similar to him versus Mickey Gall. I think Tim Means is tough enough to get it to go the distance, but I think Perry's going to win a pretty clear-cut, unanimous decision.
Fair enough. So I'm taking Mike Perry versus KO in round 2. I think Perry, although he throws a lot of strikes and whatever, it seems to me like he's a bit of a slow starter to actually find his power shots. He throws a lot, but doesn't actually seem to land a lot unless he's fighting Vicente Luque, at least in the first sort of 30 seconds to 45 seconds. So I think when he finds his range, that stuff is going to take its toll, and I think he takes him out there in round 2. So we'll move on to Shevchenko versus Ariane Lipski. So the Queen of Violence. I mean, this is just rude to be on a card with the true Shevchenko, Queen of Violence, and to try and take that name, I find disrespectful at the best of times. But here we are with Ariane Lipski and Antonina Shevchenko. So both of these females, I think, are a little bit underwhelming. Lipski came in here as the KSW champion and being supposed world beater, somebody that just finishes everyone. And we look at her finishes in KSW. We've got a TKO, a body kick finish, a rear naked choke, an armbar, punches, and then the decision. She comes in and loses handily to Joanne Calderwood, and then loses handily to Molly McCann. Now she comes back and gets a couple of wins. That disgusting knee bar that we'll remember against Luana Carolina. We know her for being a pressure fighter, an all-action fighter. She throws everything, great kicks, nice, tidy Muay Thai boxing, good takedown defense for KSW. Whereas Antonina, I think this plays right into her hands. Antonina is a counter striker by trade. She has, Jesus, I don't even want to really give her too much similarities towards Valentina, but what we do see is we see the range. She's 5'8", and for that division, that's quite tall. She's got some kicks. She's got a little bit of clinch work. I like her clinch. I think her takedown defense is okay. I don't really know who will win this fight. I'm not really sure I'm bothered either. But I probably think this is a Lipski fight to lose. Jack, what do you think?
I think Lipski's got more ways to win in that Shevchenko's grappling is reminiscent of Sean's and very basic.
Absolutely.
However, I don't necessarily think she has the wrestling chops to take Shevchenko down. With that being said, I'm basing that purely on the fact that we haven't really seen Lipski go for any takedowns. Shevchenko's takedown defense is extremely porous, so who knows? It's women's MMA. Armbar from guard is always possible. But I think most likely Shevchenko will lull her into a striking contest and she'll outpoint her over 3 rounds.
Interesting. Sean, can you give me a prediction about how many head and arm takedowns we're going to see in this fight, please?
It will be well into double figures, Harry. There is no doubt in my mind. And just on that, like I was looking through, because I agree with what you were saying, Harry, before about how there was a lot of hype behind both of these girls. And I think especially just having the Shevchenko name gets you a lot of hype as well. So I was sort of going back, looking through a couple of her fights to see where her grappling is, especially in relation to her sister. And I think it is the Lucy Pudilova fight.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously down as a rear naked choke win. But if you watch that fight, Lucy literally goes from a single leg and drops herself into a rear naked choke. She like kamikazes herself into a rear naked choke, and I was like,
Did she learn that from you?
She may have done. That's one of my signature moves. But yeah, I don't know whether they obviously had to put some sort of method of victory down, but I feel like there almost needs to be a note on these websites saying that, I don't know, like a self rear naked choke. I don't even know what you call it, but
it's called suicide. Yeah, suicide.
The suicide. Yeah. So yeah, it's I'm not been too impressed, to be honest. I think that's one of the biggest things that separates Antonina from her sister, to be honest, is that her grappling chops just don't seem to be there. And I think when you look at fights like her fight against Katlyn Chookagian, Katlyn seems to be able to start winning the striking as well, just because Antonina just can't keep up on the wrestling side of things. But yeah, so I think I've got a pretty similar verdict to you two.
Can I make an interesting comparison that came into my head, and I wonder whether you agree or disagree? Do you think Antonina Shevchenko is to Valentina Shevchenko what Artem Lobov is to Conor McGregor?
Absolutely.
But Artem's the GOAT. Is that what you mean? Do you mean that Antonina is the GOAT of women's MMA?
Clearly, sure.
Is that the...
I think that your jokes are the same as Jack's comparison to your grappling. Basic. So if I
thought you were going to say accurate.
No. If we could move to some picks, Jack, if you wanna get me through this bout, please.
Antonina by unanimous decision.
Okay, Sean.
Yep, I'm going the same.
I am going to pick the Queen of Violence, and I'm going to take Ariana Lipski by unanimous decision. Jack, if you can take us away with Alan Jouban versus Jared Gordon, please.
Of course I can. Jared Gooden, I'll have you know. This isn't recent UFC featherweight Jared Gordon. This is Jared Gooden.
Fuck both of them.
Exactly. Jared Gooden, debutant, tidy record, 17-4. Still relatively young, 26 years old. Has had some decent experience in terms of the shows he's fought on. He's been on Bellator, maybe not Bellator actually, but he's been on Titan. He's been on LFA. And he's come up against some decent opposition in his time. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any wins over anyone notable. And his losses have always come when he's taken that step up in competition. Recently, former UFC alumni Michael Graves and also Bruno Oliveira, who was on this week's Contender Series.
Really rate Michael Graves. I missed that guy.
Yeah, obviously he had some domestic violence issues as well, but in terms of actual
I don't miss him like that. I just mean in the cage.
No. Yeah. Upon reviewing his tape, there's no really outstanding skills. He's a bit of an all-rounder, preference to strike. He's a bit of a reactive submission threat, but nothing there that really gets me excited, to be honest. Alan Jouban had a really, really good run, especially in 2016 when he beat both Mike Perry and Bilal Muhammad decisively. since then has been a little bit inconsistent, both in performances and just his and just actually getting into the cage as well. His last fight was a very lackluster split decision loss to Dwight Grant. Before that, he beat Ben Saunders. To me, I think that was sad. To me, if even Jouban at kind of 70% of potential shows up, I think he's got enough craft on the feet to keep Gooden at bay, pick him apart from the outside, and either knock him out or potentially steal a decision. The concerns for me with Jouban are his age,
38
as well from the lack of fighting, and also his durability. He's never traditionally taken a shot that well, and Gooden has shown that he's got some power. As of now, I lean on Jouban just because I have seen him compete against and win against that high level of opposition. I do think he's got the better skills. The caveat just being there's a lot of question marks around his durability and just how he looks being 38 years of age coming in and off a layoff.
Sean, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Alan Jouban, I think he's definitely going into the twilight of his career. It was interesting, Jack, bringing up that win against Mike Perry, because the time when he beat Mike Perry, he really sort of brought that hype train to a halt, and he certainly looked like someone that could be going through the ranks and maybe fighting for a title at some point. And then, you know, he sort of ran into a bit of a brick wall against Gunnar Nelson, and that sort of didn't happen. I still think, in just going by strength of schedule, he should still be able to get the win here against Jared Gooden, who, at least for me, is a pretty big unknown commodity, because even though you do look through some of his fights outside the UFC and he does have knockout power, it's just not against... it's very hard to measure him because of the low level of opposition that he's faced compared to Allen. So I think I'm still edging Allen for this one.
I agree. I don't really have anything to add. I think you've summed it up really well. My pick is Alan Jouban by unanimous decision. Sean?
Yeah, I'm going to say the same. Yeah, by unanimous decision.
And Jack?
Make it 3.
Perfect. Jesus Christ, we're actually agreeing on something. So, Sean, before you take us away with the next fight, do you want to just quickly have some words about how you feel about your brother being signed to the UFC?
I feel really, really good. So we've gone from, to be fair, being compared to Chris Daukaus is an upgrade from, was it Jeff? I can't even remember his surname. Jeff Hughes. So, you know.
I still stand by that. I still stand by that.
But yeah, I like Carl Daukaus. And I think your brother. I think he had a really tough sort of first showing against Brendan Allen coming off his Contender Series win.
Yeah,
and I think
the problem.
Yeah, knowing the sort of prospect that Brendan Allen is, even though I think he was surviving at certain points during that fight, I still think he put in a really solid showing for himself, all things considered. You know, he came off getting taking a really bad knee in that first round and still managed to create moments where you know, he was sort of putting Brendan Allen on the back foot, even if it was only briefly. So I'm liking Carl Daukaus, and I think that this is a step down in competition, but a step down that he needs for the stage of career that he's in against Dustin Stoltzfus. I feel like I didn't actually butcher that surname as bad as I thought I was going to. The thing with Dustin is, at least for me, he's another unknown commodity. He's another guy who, going by his sort of Contender Series fight, there wasn't a great deal that was happening until he got that horrific slam win where he essentially just broke Joseph Pfeiffer's arm. From the little bits that I've seen of him on the regionals, he seems like a pretty good grappler. He had a really nice twister against Nihad Nasfovic. There we go. I thought I wasn't going to butcher that one, but I did. But yeah, he had a really nice twister on GMC. And even in his Contender Series fight, he looked like he was going for heel hooks and stuff like that off of his back. And he seems to have a pretty solid wrestling game up against the fence. I think overall, I'm still going to go with Chris Daukaus. I imagine that he's got a little bit of the rub that Daniel Cormier talks about after his fight against Brendan Allen. But yeah, Dustin Stoltzfus, for me, is still a bit of an unknown commodity, but I'd be interested to find out what Jack knows about him as a prospect before making the final pick.
Sure, I know as much as you. He is predominantly a grappler. He has his majority of his wins are via submission. That's obviously the part of his game that was best on show during the Contender Series bout. He does have a win over former Cage Warriors middleweight champion Jonas Bilstein, who's a long-term staple of the European circuit. And he knocked Jonas out as well, so he's obviously got some power. How I see him lining up against Kyle Daukaus. Daukaus, obviously, excellent grappler himself. More than half of his wins are by Darce choke and the vast majority by submission. So this could be a very, very interesting grappling contest, especially for all of us jiu-jitsu nerds. I do give Daukaus the slight edge in boxing, and that was kind of the part of his game that I thought looked much improved against Brendan Allen. Ultimately, I'm leaning Daukaus here. He's fought a slightly higher level of opposition. And I think he's got a little bit more of a well-rounded skill set.
So I don't really care. And I know that's rude, but what's going to happen here is we've got two guys that are clearly good grapplers, which means it's going to be an average kickboxing bout. That's what's going to happen. Because if Dustin has taken one look at Daukaus' record, he knows that he's got 3 rear naked chokes and 5 darces. So he's not going to want to shoot on him, end up in front headlock and get darsed. And equally, he's not going to want to get taken down and have his back taken and choked. So, I think what you're going to see is a kickboxing bout, right? What I would like to see is Tony Ferguson go to middleweight and fight this guy for the true Darce master, but that's for a different day. Sean, can you give us a pick, please?
Yes, so I'm going to go with Daukaus by a pretty solid unanimous decision.
Jack?
Put me down for the same, please.
And again, I don't know what's wrong. with this. We're all
makes me a little bit sick when we're all in unison like this. I want a bit more conflict.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Now we get to talk about a real fight, right? So again, I'm not sure why this is so low on the card, but this to me is just an absolutely phenomenal fight. So we're talking now Brandon Moreno versus Brandon Royval, the battle of the Brandons. Geez, where do I even start? So I feel like both of these guys, in a way, are extremely similar, right? Extremely similar in that they're seasoned. They've been through wars. They're both super chaotic fighters. They thrive in scrambles, both grappling and striking. They've both got power, and they're both durable. Now, to me, that only means one thing, and that's it's going to be super fucking fun. The other thing that's going to be really interesting about this from a very technical perspective is Royval likes to fight on the inside, and Moreno likes to fight going forward. So what we're going to see is who's going to be forced to take a back step, if anyone is going to be forced to take a back step. In Royval's last outing against Kai Kara-France, we know that Kai Kara-France is a guy that has really good footwork, really good pivots, really good switches off his punches. And Royval was like, yeah, that's cool. I'm just going to turn into the Tasmanian devil and chase you around the octagon until I put you away. Moreno has a similar style, but a little bit more calculated, I believe. Moreno is somebody that's hard-headed. He's got good defensive boxing. He's got that Mexican chin. I don't even know. Like, I'm so excited about this fight. I can't even talk about it too technically. I just think it's an absolute fucking barn burner between two guys that have just an incredible style. The one thing I will say is on the last podcast where we talked about Brandon Royval, I said the one person I didn't want him to fight in that division was Brandon Moreno, because I felt like Brandon Moreno was of bigger stature in size. He'd had more seasoning. He'd had more high-level experience. And here we are with Brandon Royval and Brandon Moreno. So, yeah, I mean, Jack, what do you think?
This is one of those, as soon as it gets announced, you kind of rub your hands together and like, yes, this one cannot miss. Yeah. Interestingly, Royval was actually the older of the two, but I agree with you, Harry, in that Moreno's more seasoned. He's had a lot more experience. He's been in the UFC for longer. And I think his fighting style is a little bit more mature. I think what we see out of Brandon Royval is kind of similar to Moreno's first UFC tenure, where he was, as you said, like a Tasmanian devil, right? He was aggressive, didn't really have much in terms of a process, and would just throw the kitchen sink at everyone he fought. Moreno's now kind of tapered that back a bit and become a lot more technical. And it was very interesting. Obviously, they both recently beaten KO R France, and it was interesting to see the difference in the maturity in the two performances. It's a real tough one. I think that Royval is going to be a threat against everyone he faces. I really love those stepping knees that he's got. I think he's challenging bantamweight Jonathan Martinez for the best standing knee in the UFC at the moment. I really like his submission threat on the ground as well. He transitions beautifully, but I kind of think Moreno's going to be a little bit more smarter and calculated here, potentially mixing a few kind of well-timed takedowns and whatnot. And I lean on his experience and his veteran savvy just to outgun the I don't want to call him the youngster, but the slight, I don't want to call him immature either. I'm trying to think of the right word. The slightly less experienced. The slightly greener fighter. But yeah, bright futures for both of these. Both I think will end up fighting for the belt one day. And both names, whenever you see them on a card, you're going to get excited. So love this matchup.
Sean?
Yeah, I agree. It's an amazing fight, and again, it's placed at such a strange point in the card. But to go off what you were saying before, Harry, about I think we had the conversation after Royval fought KO R France. That was obviously an interesting fight because the styles contrasted so much. Like you had one guy that was very measured and one guy that was chaotic, but this one is just absolute chaos on both sides. And I think another interesting thing with both of these guys is they both handled other very chaotic fighters very well. So if you think all the way back with Brandon Moreno when he guillotined Louis Smoker, I remember at the time that was like a really crazy win to sort of watch, just because Louis Smoker was always sort of king of the scramble and everything else. And obviously Brandon Royval managing to get a win in his debut against Tim Elliott, which I think in itself, to be honest, is an intangible going into this one, because there's no doubt that Brandon Moreno is more seasoned, but as of yet, Brandon Royval had someone like Tim Elliott as his debut, who you can't really get much more seasoned than that at flyweight, and just rose to the occasion. It doesn't seem to be something that plays into the way that he fights mentally, that he's at a bit of an experience disadvantage. But yeah, in terms of a pick, logical wisdom tells me that Brandon Moreno should win this on experience. But I'm on Brandon's hype train all the way to the title. So yeah, I'm all in on Brandon Royval for this one.
So my problem with this, now that I've had a little bit of time to calm down, is the people that Brandon Moreno has lost to in his first UFC stint. Sergio Pettis, who's a really good striker. Not super powerful, but a really good striker. Alexandre Pantoja, who is an extremely powerful striker and an extremely good striker, he loses unanimous decision. However, he then goes and beats KO R France, who's an exceptionally good striker, and he also pulls out a draw against Askar Askarov. Right? Now, again, that's no mean feat. Askar Askarov looks like the seriously real deal. Incredible grappling, great wrestling. Now, if we also look at his grappling bouts, this is Brandon Moreno. He went to a EBI combat jiu-jitsu type thing. One's won by Darce choke, then loses one by palm strikes, and then loses to Richard Alicorn by escape time. Now, that's no fucking mean feat. Richard Alicorn's obviously an ADCC vet, so we know that Moreno's grappling chops are really good. My problem that I think is going to be the undoing of Brandon Royval in this fight is I don't think he's going to respect Moreno. Now, in a lot of fights, we say that's a perfect tactic. Go in, play your game, don't respect your opponent too much, and just do what you have to do. I think that's going to be a problem against Moreno, because I think, as Jack has already said, there'll be well-timed takedowns there. We've not seen Royval on his back in the UFC. If we have, it's been very brief moments. It's been scrambles, etc., etc. I wonder what's going to happen when Royval's on his back and you have somebody like Moreno who has really nice ground and pound, who has good grappling. I think that's going to be interesting. Now, in the same vein, it may well be that Royval just turns around and throws another fucking spinning elbow and puts Moreno on his ass, and we see another spectacular finish. But, I mean, Sean, you're picking with your hype train for some reason. So can you give me an official pick for this fight, please?
Yeah, so I'm going to go the same way I went with Kai Kara France. I reckon he's probably going to throw a flying knee, land an omoplata, and yeah, just sub him with that right off into the sunset.
Right, so it's via sub in round what?
Can you put down the specific sub that I said, please? And I'd say round one. Why not?
Right, so we're going Brian de Royval via flying omoplata in round one. Jack?
I would like to take Mr. Moreno via unanimous decision, please.
I am going to take the same as Jack. I think that as much as I think that Royval is going to fight for the title at some point and may well win the title, to be honest, I think that Moreno is just that little bit more seasoned. He's that little bit more durable from what we've seen, right? And the only thing I will say, and I'll throw this into the mix, and it is one of Sean's intangibles, is that we hyped on it last time. Royval hates his life, essentially. He hates the job he's in, and he will do whatever he needs to do to get out of that, right? And it would not surprise me if you see him just bite down on his mouthpiece and fucking go for it. And if that does happen, who knows, right? Who knows? But I'm still picking Moreno by unanimous decision. Okay, Jack, if you could take Nicolas Dalby versus the one and only Daniel Rodriguez, please.
With pleasure. So as I mentioned earlier, this is one of my sleepers for potential fight of the night. Nicolas Dalby, two-time Cage Warriors welterweight champ.
Absolutely.
Has had a weird UFC career. If you think the three best guys he's probably fought are Zaleski dos Santos, Alex Oliveira, and Darren Till, and that's probably the fight where he's looked the best. And then he's been blown out by the likes of Zach Cummins, Peter Sabota, and Jesse Ronson. So really, really hard guy to get a read on how he's going to perform. In terms of his style, very dexterous kicker, really, really high output, really, really solid cardio, and very durable as well. Daniel Rodriguez, promising addition to the UFC's welterweight roster. He's started MMA career quite late. I think he's already 34. Trains out of 10th Planet HQ and also spends a lot of time with Joe Schilling and Cerrone. Schilling in particular is more of a comparison to Rodriguez's style. He's much more predominantly focused on his boxing as opposed to Cerrone, who's predominantly a kicker as well. Southpaw also has a high output and a really nasty left hand. He's been, I think partly because of his age, he's been thrown a little bit into the deep end already. He's picked up obviously the upset debut over Tim Means where we saw a little snippet of his grappling. And then last fight, he had an absolute chaotic one-rounder. Not quite Paul Daly, Nick Diaz, or a lost to Travis Brown, but definitely worth your time. One rounder with
pretty fucking nuts.
Yeah, he crawled back through the shadow realm to sleep Dwight Grant, and yeah, looks to be a really, really fun addition. I could see him landing out the top 15 nicely. One of the things I think will be quite challenging for Dalby here is on the feet. His output tends to be predominantly kicks, as I mentioned. And Rodriguez is a little bit taller than him. I think he may have a small reach advantage. And I think that Rodriguez will be able to probably outmatch him in terms of that volume. I think he punches a little bit quicker. I think he's a little bit longer. That means for Dalby, he's going to have to blend in his wrestling. And he's got quite underrated wrestling. He's a really decent offensive wrestler. We saw that against in the latter stages of the fight with Alex Oliveira. We saw it against Darren Till as well. I think the big question mark here is kind of on Rodriguez's grappling. So we saw a snippet in the beautiful guillotine choke he finished Tim Means with, but we haven't seen much else. So it's going to be interesting, obviously, if there is a clash in terms of Dalby's wrestling versus Rodriguez's jiu-jitsu off his back. I favour Daniel Rodriguez here. I think the judges will look more favourably on his boxing than they will Dalby's kind of flicky array of kicks. But yeah, really, really good fight, this one. I think it will probably go 3 rounds, and I favour Daniel Rodriguez to outpoint Dalby.
I agree, frankly, with all of that. The only disagreement I have is I think Rodriguez is going to sub him. But Sean, do you want to give us your opinion?
Yeah, no, I agree as well. I think Jack's right that Dalby is a strange fighter in the sense that he fights up to competition. So going against someone like Daniel Rodriguez, who has looked quite dangerous but doesn't really have that sort of name value, and maybe that could be an issue. I think going stylistically, Daniel Rodriguez sort of has his A game, which is his boxing. He has a really nice 1-2. And once he can sort of get into the flow of that, like we saw against Dwight Grant, his killer instinct's quite strong. And even if he can't, he's also shown that he can win over the distance quite comfortably as well and just sort of box circles around people. I think the times when Rodriguez has had problems has been with someone that isn't even, they don't even have to be a diverse kicker. They just have to be quite good with their standard sort of tie kicks, like especially kicks to his leg will usually like offset his rhythm and stop him sort of landing that dangerous. I think it's a left-handed. I'm pretty sure Rodriguez is southpaw. But yeah, so I think Nicolas Dalby, the key is that he's just got to use all of his skills. He's got to be a bit diverse in there. But I think the two things are definitely his kicking game. I think he's got to go to the legs of Rodriguez pretty early and often. And yeah, I think going for a couple of takedowns as well, like he did in the Alex Oliveira fight, would serve him massively in this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think the reason why I lean to Rodriguez sub is I think Jack's astute analysis of Rodriguez is a little bit longer, a little bit taller, and he's going to be aware of what Dalby brings. Dalby doesn't often, I know this is probably a weird way to say, but sit down on his kicks. He doesn't load up on his kicks. He doesn't really put all of his hips into his kicks. And for that reason, I think a lot of people don't respect the power of those kicks, and therefore they can walk forward. I think what we may see is if we do see that offensive wrestling, you may see Rodriguez throw a guillotine in there, which may cause Dalby to bail. If he bails, is he going to shoot again? Who knows? I think this is an interesting fight for sure. What happens from it, I'm not sure. But Sean, give me a pick, please.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Daniel Rodriguez. I reckon he gets this one done over the distance. So I think unanimous decision.
Jack?
I'm going to go Daniel Rodriguez by unanimous decision as well.
Perfect. Sean, take us away for Joaquin Buckley, the viral KO overnight superstar, versus Jordan Wright, please.
Yeah, so in terms of Joaquin Buckley versus Jordan Wright, I think this is a really strange fight just because both of these are still quite a big unknown commodity to me. Obviously, Buckley has sort of gone everywhere for that viral spinning back kick knockout, which even though it was really cool, I don't think it told us a huge amount more about Joaquin Buckley since he got completely, shut down by Kevin Holland. So, and the things that I've seen on Jordan Wright, again, he strikes me as one of these guys that has maybe been brought in a little bit last minute. I don't know a huge amount about him as a prospect outside of the odd fights that I've seen. It looks like he's predominantly someone that's been striking from a very young age that has added a little bit of grappling into his game as well. So he seems quite a well-rounded prospect. But again, with these two, it's so hard to measure these matchups. Like these things I've been calling the COVID matchups where, two fighters are sort of brought into the UFC. Because I think Joaquin Buckley struck me as one of those fighters that was brought in that wouldn't necessarily be there otherwise. But it's very hard to sort of measure and get a read when both of them have done most of their work outside. The only matchup that I have is obviously Buckley when he fought against Kevin Holland. And I think it shows that he's still quite a way away from that top, that top level of the divisions. So yeah, I'm not sure on this one is the honest answer. I reckon that Buckley should be able to get it done. But if I'm honest, I'm just saying that because I've seen a little bit more of him and he has at least had fights against people the standard of Kevin Holland.
Yeah, so I think my thing with Joaquin Buckley is the two recent times that he's made a step up in competition, both Logan Storley and Kevin Holland, he's got whacked, right? And I think what we have with Joaquin Buckley is, an absolutely insane jump spinning back kick that he finishes Kasangane with. I'm going to need Jack's help with that one probably. But yeah, I think Jordan Buckley is a very green fighter, whereas Jordan Wright looks like he's a little bit more rounded out. He's got TKO finishes, KO finishes, spinning back kick finishes. He's got rear naked chokes. He's got arm triangles. So he's got somewhat of a rounded game based on his finishes. Now, he could have been fighting cans. I can't say I reckon.
He has been fighting cans. He is
the
a certified can crusher extraordinaire.
The only guy that he's fought, right, was Anthony Hernandez, who's gone on to do okay in the UFC. But again, that was a no contest. So, look, I mean, who knows on this fight, right? Jack, fill us in on some can crushing.
Yeah, so Jouban Wright's a bit of a weird one. In terms of actually the people he's fought who are recognisable, because he's fought a lot of bad people. He had a decent win over Craig Wilkerson. He's a regular on LFA. He got blasted by Anthony Hernandez, who hasn't actually proven to be that good in his UFC tenure. He beat Gabriel Checo, which is actually a pretty good win. And then he obviously had his debut where he started very strong and the fight was stopped due to a cut. He's a very flashy kicker, and he seems to have an opportunistic submission game. But again, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a style or game that's congealed. It's very, very much separate. He's either striking or he's grappling. With that being said, he is very much a striking threat on the feet, and Buckley has been knocked out in a couple of his losses. Mm-hmm. I favour Buckley here purely based on strength of resume. As someone who kind of grew up and matured in Bellator and LFA, he was fighting a much better level of opposition, and he's fought some really, really decent regional guys and had some successes and some losses as well. Ultimately, I just think he's a little bit more, I guess, reliable. Jouban Wright's still a bit of an unknown commodity. So, yeah, I'm banking on Joaquin Buckley to get another highlight reel knockout.
Really? Okay, so what's your pick?
Buckley KO round 1.
Sean?
Yeah, I'm probably going to jump on with that, to be honest.
I don't care about either of these guys, so I'm going to go with the same as you guys. We'll move on to the final fight on this card, and that's Louis Cosce, fuck you, Sean, versus Sasha Palatnikov. Jack, can you please fill us in?
Of course. So my Eastern European scouting report actually had to venture to Southeast Asia for this one. So Palatnikov is actually Russian. He's Russian, but he was born in Hong Kong, has spent some time in Thailand at Phuket Top Team and Tiger Muay Thai, and he's currently in Vegas at Syndicate MMA. As you would expect from someone who spent a lot of time in Thailand, he's a Muay Thai stylist. He's 6'1", so he's going to have a bit of size and length over Cosce.
He usually fights a middleweight, right?
He has had some fights at middleweight, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough cut.
He just fought, the only notable on his record, he fought Munir Lazez. I think I'm saying that right.
Yes.
Who obviously had a great debut over Razak Al Hassan. He got at
100.
Pretty much pasted in that one. And he's also been KO'd once before. No wins over anyone notable. I'd say it's a bit of a surprise signing, to be honest. Most likely, he's probably just got the call up because he's in Vegas at the moment. Right. Louis Cosce, also a bit of an unknown. Came through Dana White's Contender Series along with his brother. Physical, fast, very good athlete. All of his wins have been knockouts in round 1. Had very much limited experience against kind of notables, but he actually picked up a pretty decent scalp in his Contender Series bout, becoming the first to knock out durable regional vet Victor Reina. For me, what this comes down to is I think the speed's going to be a big difference here. Whilst Palatnikov might have a slightly more varied striking arsenal, he's there to be hit, and I think his reach advantage will get mitigated by Cosce's speed. I think the UFC like the Cosce brothers. The other one was supposed to be fighting Dalby. And I think they're going to put a little bit behind him, and I think it's a bit of a soft match for him. So, look, whilst Palatnikov has a lot of striking experience, he's been knocked out twice in his 7 fights. And, yeah, Cosce hits very hard, he's very quick, and I think he'll pick up the KO here as well.
Sean?
Yeah, really quick. We were talking about, reactive fighters compared to active fighters before, and I think this is one of those matchups. I think from the small bit that I've seen from Louis Cosce, he's been, he's super aggressive. He seems like he's really fast, even though there's a couple of wins that he has on the regionals, which seem that maybe his record's a little bit padded. But from the fights that I've watched of Sasha, he seems much more like someone that warms up into the fight. He's a bit more of a slow starter. And I'm not sure he's going to get the chance to sort of warm up in this one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know anything about either of these guys. And to be honest, neither do I really care. I think, as we've said, if this is I find it strange, right? Is that if it's a a pay-per-view card, like I expect not notable names necessarily, but I expect good matchmaking, and I expect names that we're either going to hear of or have heard of. And this is a fight night card. I look at fight night card as developmental cards at this point, so I expect to see those. But anyway, let's move to picks. Jack, you're going to go with the Cosce, right?
Cosce continues his run of knocking people out in the first round.
Sean?
Yeah, no, exactly the same again. There's been way too much agreement on this podcast.
Next time, guys, I'm going to wait for all of your picks and then just disagree with them, just so we've got a bit of just some commotion going on.
Yeah,
like fuck me. Let's look at this, right? So we've all picked the same for Figueiredo Perez. We've all picked the same for Shevchenko Maia. We've essentially picked the same for Shogun Craig. We've picked the same almost for Chookagian Calvillo. We've all picked Mike Perry. We've all picked. Oh no, we haven't. Fucking me going Lipski. We've all picked Jouban unanimous decision. All picked Daukaus unanimous decision. All picked Buckley KO first round. All picked Cosce first round KO. We've all picked Rodriguez. Jesus Christ. It's almost like we're friends. It's weird.
Do you know what? If you're listening to this, just bet your house on all of those ones, because we're not going to be wrong, right? Come on,
do it. It can't possibly be wrong.
Remortgage your house, put the deposit down.
Yeah.
Make yourself
3
money.
entirely amateur MMA watchers with zero cage experience.
Speak for yourself, Harry. Speak for yourself.
Yeah, here we go. Right, so any final thoughts on this card before we close this out?
All hail John Lineker.
Yeah, watch John Lineker's fight instead. That would be my advice for this card.
God, I fucking hate both of you so much. Right, is that literally it? Is that all you got to say? Just hail John Lineker.
What else is there to say?
Oh, it's fair. It's fair.
It's a good bombshell to end it on. To be
Fuck
fair.
it. Let's close it out there. Jack, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you very much. And again, congratulations on your well-deserved brown belt, my friend.
Obrigado.
I'm really excited to see. Obrigado Dale Ors. I'm really excited to see you going up and guys that weren't wanting to fight you at a purple belt now having to fight you because you're a brown belt and a black belt. So I'm really excited for that. Sean, I mean, I don't really enjoy talking to you. It's just part of the furniture at this point. So I do have to thank you for your time anyway. But yeah, as always, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Take care of yourselves, please.